Types of main verbs. Verbs can be divided into two different groups, depending on what kind of activity they describe. These are known as stative and dynamic verbs. Stative verbs. How to describe a state. How do you describe a state of being? For example, you might say the following. He loved to read every night before sleeping. My dog hates being groomed. He really appreciates it when you spend the extra time with him. She feels really under the weather today.
All of these examples describe someone or something's state of being in a particular situation, such as loving something, hating something, appreciating and feeling. And these are all stative verbs, as they don't describe a physical action, but a thought, emotion, relationship or state instead. These include verbs of senses, e.g., feel, hear, see, smell, taste. Verbs of emotion, e.g., adore, fear, hate, like, love, want, wish. Verbs of mental activity, e.g., agree, believe, expect, forget, mean. Verbs of possession, e.g., belong, own, possess.
Verbs of state are not usually used in progressive tenses. When they are used in progressive tenses, they change their meaning. I'm just feeling to see if the bone is broken. We were tasting some interesting New Zealand wines. She is expecting another child. You can use these verbs in the past, present and future tenses, but an important point to remember is that they cannot be used in the progressive or continuous tense with ing at the end.
For example, you might say the following with a non-stative verb. She's running for the train right now. However, using the same form for a stative verb is incorrect. She's hating being late for work. Instead, you'd simply use the present form. She hates being late for work. How can you tell if a verb is stative? A good way to decide is to think about what it means. If it describes the relationship between things, such as equal, depend on, and belong to, or if it describes an emotional state, such as love, need, surprise, and disagree, then it's likely to be a stative verb.
Dynamic verbs. All about doing. By contrast, dynamic verbs can seem a lot simpler, as they're all about doing some kind of physical activity. Most verbs describe an action such as walking, running, or reading. When we need a verb to describe a new activity, English grammar allows us to adapt other parts of speech or to invent a new word. Recently adapted or invented verbs include windsurf and gazump.
Johnny is running for the train. Miz has just bought a new camera. She is putting on an exhibition of her photographs. Lee has seen the film already. The play was broadcast on ARY. Chris and Jane were windsurfing all afternoon. They were gazumped by a buyer with more money. You can see some obvious dynamic verbs in the following examples. The dog is chasing the squirrel. She ran 3 marathons last year. I ate my birthday cake for breakfast.
But as well as obviously physical dynamic verbs, some are not quite as clear to identify. Some activities, such as sleeping, reading or writing, might not be very active in practical terms, but are still classed as dynamic verbs, and used in the same way. A good way to tell the difference between stative and dynamic verbs is seeing if there is a clear start and finish to the activity of the verb. Dynamic verbs tend to have a clear start time and end time, even if it's over a long period.
She drank 5 bottles of cola in one night. The cat slept all morning on my sofa. He walked across the mountains until he reached the highest summit. By contrast, stative verbs don't have such a clear start and finish point to the state or feeling being described. The dog loves it when you pet his ears. She hates it when people are late. I doubt that he will come to the wedding.